Okay, for Joy. Oh, it's right next to me because I'm here. Okay. Hi. You hear that?
Yeah, I ran through. I have never been on the bar. I ate an apple.
Oh, yeah.
So.
They've got all sports.
Yeah, that's the part. Oh, I see what's wrong. Got it.
I bought a bunch of them because that's for women, especially when you have a cowl. I don't
And then it was all the same time.
Really not much to see on
Probably, there's nothing, only what's on that paper, which is available online.
You don't, yeah, I just think so. Alright, thanks from.
Are we ready to go text only?
Your glasses, you need the nose ring and your glasses. Yeah, that's falling down. This is a different, this is like version 3, which is my third. That looks, it fits really nice. And it's fully reversible. Maybe that's what I need to do.
Neil is in his third year.
Then it's just like, oh, it's fully reversible. Oh, look at, I love that color. Go. 86. That looks better. Yeah, do that. Yeah, that's better.
So we're ready? Yes. Okay. Thanks. Cool.
We don't need this, there's no public comment. Oh, I hate the mouse. I actually just use the touchpad.
Oh, yeah, you see, maybe I should get it. I want to do it. Chicken scratch. I got them. Yeah, I have more problem with my hair. And I like the head ones, usually this is my first year. Yeah, my earrings are, I got like jersey, so it's jersey knit, so it doesn't hurt. Where's the press? Bring on the press. Oh, full court press.
Order in the court. I'd like to call the Thursday, July 30th, 2020 school board meeting to order. Member Clerk, would you please take roll call?
Member Corcoran. Present. Member Corcoran is present. Member Ketto.
Present.
Member Ketto is present. Member Olson. Here. Member Olson is here. Member Rayfield.
Present.
Member Rayfield is present. Member Tyson. Here. Member Tyson is here. Member Peterson.
Here.
Member Peterson is here, and Member Luthner is here.
All right, with that, could we have a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Moving on to number 4, new business, return to school discussion and planning. Dr. Massey.
Thank you, Chair Peterson, and board members, thanks for making the time available for a special meeting. I think we clearly have a critically important topic in front of us. I'd like to also acknowledge and welcome anybody who's watching online and appreciate your interest in this important topic. I've got a series of slides I'm going to share that will detail out some planning that we've been engaged in over the summer and information that we received this afternoon from the Minnesota Department of Education and the governor. Walk through some concepts and frameworks for the start of the school year and ultimately ask for your approval and support on a recommendation. But before I get into my slides, I want to take just a quick moment and acknowledge where we have come from March 15th to today. From March 15th to the end of the school year, we're all fully aware that we were thrusted into a distance learning model for all kids statewide and certainly across the Forest Lake schools. And the engagement of our students, our families, our parents in making that system work is beyond imagination and incredibly impressive. I know and we acknowledge the strain that that put on our families. We acknowledge the difficulty that presented to our kids and the loss of connection that they had during the time with their teachers. If you think about high school kids and especially our seniors and their loss of activities and interactions, although I would say what we provided for graduation at the end of the year was really quite remarkable. Bottom line is, it was a real challenge for our families and for our kids. But I also have to acknowledge that our staff across this school district, March 15th to the end of the school year, pulled off an incredible feat and an incredible task with almost no time to plan. The level of investment, effort, strain that they put into making those connections, far from what they would want in in-person learning, but they were dealt a really difficult challenge. And they stepped up every step of the way with full effort and full engagement and passion to make learning work. And I just want to acknowledge our staff across the system that delivered meals, provided transportation, provided support, handing out learning materials, and teachers who woke up every day to face a new challenge trying to reach their kids. So congratulations to our staff and our system for that work. But now we get to move forward now through the summer as we begin to stare down the start of the school year. And clearly, the start of the school year will need to be different than the start of the school year, than the last spring. And in anticipation of the start of the school year, we were asked by the Department of Education to spend time this summer building out models, the 3 different models that were potential models for this school year. Full in-person learning, scenario 1, hybrid learning model, scenario 2, and full distance learning, model 3. Accounting for student family support, of course academics, accounting for building operations, and then educator support and professional learning. To do this planning and to do this work, we put together a 30-member planning team that met across those days up through now July 28th, and we've got a number of planning days scheduled coming up next week, the 13th, 18th, and 24th of August. And this team was comprised of parents, students, teachers, paraprofessionals, food service, transportation, district nursing, administration, and school board. The amount of detail that this group has dug into and have used that detail to begin to formulate plans is really quite impressive and allows us tonight to begin to look at, now with guidance from the governor, how we might begin to think about and plan for the start of the year. So I'm excited tonight to be able to share in alignment with the governor and Minnesota Department of Education, Minnesota Department of Health, how we might consider opening for the fall of 2020. Our planning work and our efforts to open the school year is driven by a set of priorities. First, and foremost to deliver exceptional learning that also adheres to health and safety guidelines. And quite honestly, to maximize to every extent possible in-person learning for our students. Of course, to keep students and staff safe and healthy. Equity and making learning work for all kids regardless of resources to account for all those needs for students. Of course, regular and effective communication with our parents, our staff, and our students. And I think we all understand the need to be flexible throughout the rest of the summer and as we start the year and work our way through the school year to meet the diverse needs of our students and staff. Our planning process was a two-team structure, again, fully planning out the 3 different models. The collective role, again, was to prioritize student needs through an equity lens. Staff needs were also extremely important, with safety being the most important staff consideration. Input again, parents, student, staff, and we had survey information at the beginning of our spring distance learning and at the end that provided invaluable data from our parents, our students, and our staff. And early on in the summer and throughout the summer, we've been given guidance, planning guidance from MDE, MDH, and the CDC. So today, the governor, as many of you listened and watched, provided some guidance for school districts as we begin to think about starting the school year. I won't share all the information in slides, but I'll share 3 critical slides that are germane and critical to our planning. First is that we go through and work through a series of steps as we look at which model is most appropriate to start the school year. With the first step being Minnesota Department of Health using data from counties to determine the basis of learning models for color. We aren't just going on a whim here, we are being driven by COVID cases in the counties in which we operate our schools. And that would be, of course, Washington, Chisago, and Anoka. Minnesota Department of Education sharing county data and the consultative process for public schools to engage with education and public health experts to review their county health data and safe learning plans. Step 3, public schools with their incident command team, which for us is our steering team, which is a subset of the planning team, will evaluate their ability to implement required and recommended health best practices. And step 4, public schools in consultation with public health will determine a learning model to begin the school year and communicate that decision with their school community. And we're beginning that process tonight. And public schools and MDH will monitor the community and school level impact of COVID-19 on a regular basis. Again, the need to be fluid, nimble, and flexible as we approach the year, enter the year, and work our way through the year. And adjustments, we believe, will need to be made to the learning model as we get into the year and through the year. Today, provided by the governor and Minnesota Department of Health and Minnesota Department of Education, provides a fairly simple formula for analyzing COVID cases in our 3 respective communities. And that formula would be the total number of positive cases in a 14-day period of within a population of 10,000 within a respective community. So positive cases out of 10,000 within our respective communities. That creates a positive rate that then gets filtered into this set of parameters. So based on that metric, positive cases per 10,000 residents in a community, if that number results in 0 to 9, MDH and MDE and the governor would permit in-person learning for all students. If the positive cases is between 10 and 19. The parameter in the recommendation, the guidance, would be in-person learning for elementary students, hybrid learning for students in grades 7 through 12. If the positive case numbers in our counties results in 20 to 29, they would recommend hybrid learning, elementary and secondary. If the positive case counts are 30 to 49 within a county, they would recommend and guide toward a hybrid learning elementary student for elementary students and distance learning for secondary students. And if the number is 50 or greater, distance learning for all students. So we now have a metric and parameters that would guide decision making in consultation with MDE and MDH. So what does it look like currently in our three respective counties? Based on the 14-day period, July 5th through July 18th, that count would be 15.54 in Anoka County, 5.85 in Chisago, and 14.84 in Washington County. And you can see that based on those positive case counts, in our three counties, we would fall in the in-person learning elementary and hybrid learning for secondary. I would point out, however, that 15.54 is not far from 20. So it's edging toward hybrid learning all students, that category. But currently, we're at the in-person learning, elementary, hybrid learning, if that's where we decide to land. Yes.
Where are, most of our students are in Washington County, correct?
That's correct. Yep. And one of the frequent questions and early questions we're getting is, well, if we have relatively to our district fewer students from Chisago, and Chisago numbers spike, would that drive a decision for the district? It was clearly stated today from the governor specifically that these are guideposts and that we would have the ability in consultation with MDH to look at our district as a whole and not as a subset or an aggregate based on a small part of a particular county or one school within a county. So again, these are guideposts, not rigid parameters, but guideposts to help planning and guidance for districts. Given the fact that our current numbers would place us in in-person learning for elementary and hybrid for secondary, I want to take some time and share with you the planning work from our planning team with respect to in-person learning elementary and hybrid for secondary. So my next set of slides will begin to show some of the higher level detail that would guide planning and learning in these different models. So in-person learning for grades early childhood education through 6th grade, because we certainly identify K-6, but we also need to include early childhood, which has been a growing program for Forest Lake area schools. Again, in-person learning for students in grades K-6. Students in early childhood programs would receive daily in-person instruction as well. And that there would be a full distance learning option available for students who prefer or need a model, this type of learning model. So a distance learning model would be available for any student who would prefer a distance learning model versus in-person model. And we would provide both options and fully staff and run those models. Let's take a quick look at, from our perspective, what the benefits of in-person learning for grades E6 would be. First, an ability to keep students in classroom groups with minimal contact with other students. I think one of the differentials between elementary and secondary is the ability to contain groups of kids so there's little, if not limited, interaction with large numbers of kids. I think you can see that at the elementary level, the ability to contain a classroom for much of the learning day as a pod or cohort of elementary kids. We're at the secondary level with class schedules changing 7 times a day at the middle school, 5 times a day at the high school. Kids are exposed to and exposing themselves to hundreds of kids throughout the day. So I think that is a large driver to the differential between secondary and elementary. The ability to, the benefit of in-person learning is the ability to assess learning loss that occurred in the spring, as well as current learning needs. Distance learning is more challenging, I think we would agree, for students in elementary, especially early elementary grades. May need to transition to some level of distance learning later in the year, and in-person learning allows for the opportunity to create early connections and relationships with kids. If we are going to need to move to a hybrid at the elementary level or distance learning based on case counts, having those early relationships established through in-person learning is absolutely essential. And if we have the opportunity to be in-person learning, there's great value in the opportunity to assess where kids are at, get to know their learning needs, develop learning plans for kids, and to establish those important connections, whether it's full in-person or hybrid learning model. And according to recent reports, and was stated from the health department today, risk of infection and spread of COVID-19 is lowest among the youngest learners. So I'll take that science from the health department, and that was shared again today. Let's take a quick look at the hybrid model for grades 7 through 12. A hybrid model would be an alternating based on our planning from our large planning team. We developed out an alternating in-school and out-of-school learning model on an A-B rotational schedule. So let me just kind of flesh it out. In a couple slides further will give us more detail. But essentially, we would create a maroon and gold we'd code a school calendar with maroon days and gold days alternating every other day. Students would be assigned to a maroon cohort or maroon day or a gold day. And we would divide that evenly at the best we could, a 50-50 scenario based on alphabet. We know there are some families that have different last names in the same household, and we do everything we could to accommodate the same learning day for those families, and we just do that one by one with families. So in addition to an every other in-person with hybrid learning or at-home learning, would be much like the elementary model, a full distance learning model would be available for students who prefer or need that type of a model. So again, in addition to hybrid, there would be the option in grades 7 through 12 for families to elect into a distance learning model if that fit their needs best. The hybrid model, as I've indicated, the middle school and high school students would they change classes multiple times throughout the day, which creates a real challenge for large groups of kids. We have 2,000 kids at the high school, 1,000 kids at the middle school. Hybrid model reduces that number in half and significantly reduces the interaction and connection and potential spread among students. Reducing the number of students in school by 1/2 reduces student interaction and risk again. Staff are exposed to fewer students on a daily basis. In-person learning allows for the opportunity to create connections and establish strong teacher-student relationships to better support students in the event that we need to transition to distance learning later in the year. Again, taking advantage of low case counts. and then taking advantage of the opportunity to have in-person, face-to-face learning for some of the time. Independent learning is a more manageable task for middle school and high school students, especially with the use of Canvas as our learning management tool. Again, distance learning is a challenge, especially for our youngest learners. According to recent reports, as was shared and bared out today with the health department data, risk of infection and the spread of COVID-19 is higher for adolescents, hence the need to reduce the number of kids in school. What might that model look like on a rotational basis? Again, a maroon cohort and a gold cohort. There would be in-school learning days and out-of-school learning days. Of course, in-school learning days are opportunities to interact directly with their teacher around the learning. It may not be lecture and then go home and practice. There may be flipped lessons on the distance learning day where they're exposed to the concept. And then when they're in person, students are interacting with their teacher around the learning in a practice or lab kind of setting. There's been a number of teachers flipping lessons for a number of years, and we would continue to use that concept. Distance learning days would not be, under the hybrid model, a way in which we expect kids to advance their learning. In other words, it's a time to pre-learn in preparation for in-person learning, practice what was done in the classroom, or enrich what was done in the classroom. And you can see what the rotational schedule might look like. The hybrid plan will be an every other day rotation again. School calendar would be coded. And I would point out that we will be coding our calendar regardless of the model we start the year on, as maroon and gold. And every student in the next couple of few weeks will be assigned to a maroon day or a gold day. If we start the year in person in elementary and need to move to a hybrid at some point, those days will be identified, and the day on which those students come to school or stay at home will also be identified. And we'll do that pre-work up front. Class at the 7-12 level, so let's be clear, this is 7-12 here. Classroom teacher will continue to provide lesson support for students who are absent due to illness or need to quarantine, or those students who choose a full distance learning model. Again, the Canvas tool being the platform on which we build learning and provide learning will serve kids in distance learning as well as kids coming to the classroom. The learning emphasis in person, again, now this applies to if we proceed with where we fall today on the metric. All scheduled courses would be maintained for each student. So middle school or high school students will get a school schedule, whether in distance learning or a hybrid learning, and they would follow that schedule. The at-home learning days will include opportunities for students to reinforce the learning from the previous day, extend their learning, and or do pre-work for tomorrow or the next day's lesson. The companion distance learning program, again, pointing out that this would be for 7th through 12th grade at this time. A full distance learning option, again, being available. If we were to go to distance learning at some point, I just share this detail from the planning team. Again, this is not to suggest that we're distance learning elementary, but if we were, full distance learning students would be assigned to a distance learning teacher who will provide instruction for the duration of the distance learning. So at the elementary level, if we are in person, those families that elect distance learning, they will be assigned to a distance learning cohort of kids and teachers. And they will get the rich instruction and learning that they would get if they were coming in person. There's a lot of detail behind what that would look like, but for the sake of staying in a framework concept for this presentation, we'll leave it at that for now. For the middle school and high school students who would be in the distance learning program, as I mentioned before, they would have a schedule like they were coming to school on a regular basis, and they would be assigned to their classroom teacher as if they were coming every day, but they would access and do their learning in a distance learning format, supported through the virtual learning by way of Canvas, our learning management tool. Attendance and grading under this concept. For in-person learning, attendance is based on evidence of engagement in learning activities during the at-home learning days. Actually, this would be for the 7-12, as we're talking 7-12 on the hybrid, that their attendance on those days would be determined based on evidence of engagement in learning. Typical grading system will be implemented at the elementary, middle school, or high school system. Letter grades in the earlier grades, number grade in the earlier grades, letter grade in the upper grades, middle school and high school. You'll recall last year we went with a pass, no pass, essentially, and an elective option if kids wanted to letter grade. The letter grade would be our standard grading basis. Member Luthner has spoken previously about the need to sustain and maintain rigor throughout our system. I think we would all agree. And our grading system is a way to reflect that same level of standards and expectation level. Child care at the elementary level would run much the same as it would during a typical school year for an in-person model. SAC and Sonic before and after school programs would remain the same. It would be a fee-based program. Again, the in-person model, kids are coming to school every day, and SAC and Sonic would be available before and after school as in a typical school year. Our planning team spent a lot of time talking about staff and student wellness and health office configurations. We will consult regularly with MDH regarding local case data. I'll point out that Tricia Pizzuti, one of our district nurses who's here tonight, is serving as our COVID contact representative and specialist, if you will, who's got direct contact and relationship with MDH. So she's working closely with our response teams and our steering team. Implement MDH and CDC health protocols, checklists to be conducted at home before leaving for school. There's been questions on whether or not we would temperature check kids as they came to school. The answer would be no, given the volume of kids that would need to be temperature checked. But following these guidance, all families would be given a set of guidelines that would ask them to make sure they're following. Of course, we're engaging with kids at the classroom level and as they enter the school. And if kids do not feel well or they don't look well, we will be directing them to the health office where they will be given care and their health will be assessed. Require students and staff to stay home if not feeling well. Establish a process to implement proper safeguards to handle suspected COVID-19 cases to minimize risk of transmission, and those processes and guidelines are very explicit on the MDH website and provided for schools, and they provide direct resources for schools. When and if there might be a positive case, we will have direct contact to consult with MDH folks on how to proceed with contact tracing or the need to have staff members or student quarantine or expanded groups of kids who may need to be quarantined. Establish a COVID-19 symptom area separated from the area in our health office for non-COVID related illness. We do not want to be mixing kids that might be have COVID related illness, who may infect other kids that might be in the health office for medication or other needs that they might have in the health office. We talked about personal protection for students. We now know that masks are required for students in K-12. We find that to be a very welcoming development for schools in providing an added measure of safeguard for all students and staff. Of course, optimizing physical distancing within a feasible manner, hand sanitizer in each room, cleaning solutions for desks, personal screening at home, enhanced air exchange. We can be proud of the fact that through our bond referendum and all of our work with our schools, updated HVAC systems, I've recently learned, because we've had to talk about this, that we exchange indoor classroom air in a typical classroom 3 times every hour with fresh outdoor air. The concern that COVID may linger in the atmosphere or in the air, we turn the air over every hour 3 times in a typical classroom with outdoor fresh air. That is a big deal with respect to enhancing safety for students and staff. And of course, restrict sharing of school supplies among students. Personal protection for staff. Again, masks required and provided if needed. Face shields provided. We learned today that MDE and MDH are providing a mask, 1 mask for every student across the state of Minnesota, and 3 disposable masks for every student across the state of Minnesota. Same for staff. A face mask will be provided by the state if needed. Many staff have masks, as we have come to understand and know. But also face shields provided by the district and the state of Minnesota for staff that want additional protection. Designated teacher space in classrooms to maintain physical distancing. Older kids we need to maintain distancing. Early elementary kids, maybe not so much. So we can actually create designated space that when a teacher is in this space, students do not encroach on that space to maintain distance. Hand sanitizer in each room, cleaning solutions for desks and other frequently touched surfaces. Again, enhanced air exchange. School building procedures, excess furniture being removed from schools and classrooms the best we can. We need file cabinets and storage cabinets, but some classrooms tend to gather other materials. We're trying to minimize those in classrooms to create as much spacing as possible. We've already established sneeze shields for building office administrative assistants, plastic barriers around their workspace. Nightly disinfecting of frequently touched surfaces will happen in all of our schools nightly. Buses will be sprayed with disinfectant after morning and afternoon routes, windows left open to aerate buses. And of course, MDH and CDC guidance if positive COVID-19 cases are identified. That leads me to our administrative recommendation. Given the case numbers that we currently have in Anoka, Chisago, and Washington County, administration would recommend that the board asks that we adhere to and follow MDE and MDH guidance and protocols for in-person, hybrid, and distance learning. I would take you back to the parameters for in-person, hybrid, or distance learning based on case counts. Those would be the parameters and protocols that we would be following based on positive case counts. Currently, as I just showed, even in our most restrictive county, current data would support in-person learning in kindergarten through 6th grade, including early childhood, and hybrid learning in grades 7 through 12. and that we continue to be directed to provide and support distance learning options for all students who may need that or want that option. And of course, that we monitor county data and consult with MDH as school opening model countywide data may change. Today is July 30th. We have a set of data for the 2-week period ending July 18th. I would point out that those numbers have risen slightly over time. We have implemented a mask mandate statewide. Hopefully that mitigates positive cases and keeps numbers low. But we will monitor that as we approach the school year. But based on current counts, administration recommends, in consultation with MDE and MDH, and in accordance with statewide case data, that Forest Lake Area School begin the school year with in-person learning for students in grades K through 6, including early childhood, and to begin the school year in grades 7 through 12 with a hybrid learning model, and that a full distance learning option be provided for any student, and that administration be prepared to adjust the opening plan according to case numbers and in consultation with MDH. And that concludes my presentation.
Do we have a motion to approve the administration recommendation as read?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
I guess, I have to voice a concern I've had all along, even though I agree with all of this, and I think it's a great thing that the state has done. I mean, I think the guidelines are certainly helpful. But I have a concern only about Washington County, because that's where the majority of our population is right now. Washington County is the 5th largest populated county in the state of Minnesota. It encompasses everything from North Forest Lake all the way down to Woodbury, including White Bear, Stillwater, and all those other cities. It's 423 square miles. So my concern is, and it's a concern that we continue to monitor locally, because county data in that situation, I've dealt a lot with data in that situation, that's an awfully large area to include all that data. So, you know, I'm all for this, but I just want to make sure that we're aware and that we continue to monitor all of the local numbers, because that's really what counts is our school district parameters and not 423 square miles, although we make up a lot of that, 423 square miles.
Well, and remember, Carol, I guess what I would say to that is, if I interpret your question and comment accurately, that monitoring might reflect high numbers locally, low numbers elsewhere, or the converse, where there's a high case count in Cottage Grove,
Right.
and maybe not Forest Lake.
Right.
And that's where the response team that the state's setting up, in consultation with MDH, and we'd have direct access to those folks who know that data, where we can talk through it. If the Washington County metric spikes, yet it doesn't seem to reflect Forest Lake area in our school population, we heard today that they would evaluate that on a case-by-case, situation-by-situation basis, and that these are guideposts, not rigid plans.
Thank you.
I would add to that, though, that if we're continuing sports, that a lot of our team competitions would be all over the rest of Washington County. So we might be up in the northern end, but our basketball team spent the weekend elsewhere. So in the law of averages, we might as well just take the big number. But like Dr. Massey said, we still have case-by-case responsibility for our own area, and that's why we're here.
I didn't touch on this, but we believe that the State High School League will be providing guidance on August 3rd. And I suspect, from everything we have heard from them earlier, that if there's a high case count at Park Cottage Grove, I don't mean to pick on Park Cottage Grove, and we're scheduled to play them in football, we may not, if we're playing football. So we'll have that level of data available to us as we're sending teams out across our counties and across our country.
there's already kids though playing all over the state. Tournaments are happening now.
Member Rayfield?
So one,
Yeah, so, I mean, one of the things that I've been really concerned about, like when we looked at last year, is just kind of equity for students. And, you know, you've got a student with both parents that are working and out of the house, or a student that struggles. I think it's a real issue of equity in getting every kid. I mean, because we really believe that every kid should get a good education, and I think that I really like how this addresses that. It gets the students in front of a teacher. There's that accountability. There's a relationship building with the teachers, and so I really like how this has taken a smart approach of, you know, having our, you know, K through 6, everybody shows up, and because I think that works best, and we, you know, the science really shows that they're not the big spreaders of the disease. And then through 7 through 12, you know, you're keeping those numbers small, you're keeping the distances as best you can, but you're also making sure that those students are in front of a teacher, which we know works best, and especially, you know, with the kids that struggle, I think they really need that, you know, that one-on-one with the teacher, especially the relationship building, because last year, you know, the kids had already built relationships with those teachers, and that's really going to be tough if we're not able to do this year. And I also want to say I really like the flexibility of this, saying that this is how we're going to start the year based on what the conditions we're seeing right now. But if things get better, we can alter it to do better, and if they get worse, we can be more restrictive in how we do it. So I really appreciate this plan, and I just want to say how much I appreciate the thoughtful approach the administration has been taking with this. It's been frustrating waiting for the state to come out with something, but today when they came out with something, they showed that they had been taking their time and really taking a thoughtful approach. And so I guess it was worth the wait in my opinion. So.
Member Tyson?
Well, just to add on what Member Rayfield said, I had the big hallelujah moment when I heard that we could be using these models, because I think kids have advanced a grade, and just to start without meeting your staff and your new teacher and having that groundwork laid would be really, really difficult. And so I was really happy to see that we could get everybody in front of their teachers in the fall, and just super glad that for parents' sake that we can be doing that for those that want that. I want to thank all the parents that have called me and reached out to me with their concerns and frustrations. I think it's so important and vital to have them involved, that they were on that 30-member panel. And also just thank all of our staff for the strong leadership that we've shown through this whole thing. And it's fluid, nobody has all the right answers. So kudos to Member Rayfield. I'm so proud of our district. But I have one question to clarify with the superintendent, going back to Member Ketto's. So you talk about those posts that are just, we have 3 counties to be involved. So given that Chisago might be high, we can still go with Washington County, because that's the bigger majority of our student population.
That is not real clear in the guidance as of yet. I'm going on the governor's comment that these are guideposts, and the staff at MDH, along with our staff, will work case by case, situation by situation, to address anomalies or unique situations that might develop in the district. If you think about Anoka County, we've got just a couple of schools in Anoka County, and our Columbus residents might be in the least populated part of Anoka County. And if Anoka County spikes high, that may not be a concern for our district as a whole or our schools in Anoka County, but we would get guidance and clarity, I should say, from MDH on how best to proceed given that high number that might show up in a particular county.
That's good to know that we have that flexibility and guidance. Thank you.
Member Corcoran?
I also want to thank the administration and all the people that really helped get this plan together. I think it's really thoughtful, and having that calendar set up right away in the event, especially for the elementary that might have to go virtual, so that, I think that's great. I just had a question regarding busing, kind of wondering how that's gonna work. And also the staffing, is it still gonna be lower ratio, student to staff? I just wonder if that was clarified with this plan?
The all in-person model would not necessarily result in smaller class sizes. However, keep in mind that some families might like distance learning, leaving a third grade classroom with fewer kids than would typically show up in a typical year. But we'll need staff to work within the distance learning model. So we'll be shifting staff based on their need to be out of school, and then matching students in distance learning with those kids. So we don't believe that in-person learning, that lower class sizes is the objective or the end result. It may happen in case some situations, but we're not going to count on that. The hybrid model, the numbers of kids coming in on the in-person day is 50%. So the numbers get reduced by half in with half at home, and that's at the one goal concept. With respect to buses, we anticipate if we have kids coming to school in person or hybrid, we're running our typical bus routes. Under this recommendation, based on numbers today, the elementary routes will have a typical number of kids on buses. We will invite families, if they're concerned about that, to carpool or drive their own kids to school, and we'll work on traffic patterns and traffic flows the best we can to accommodate that. For the hybrid model at the secondary level, same routes, half the kids. If we're hybrid across the board at some point, same routes, half the kids lower on the in-person.
And I have one more question regarding temperature. I know at businesses now, when you come into any business, they take your temperature, the model they take it. Is that something we're gonna start with kids coming in, or I know that's a health question, but just so parents understand.
Our plan is not to be checking temperatures for every student. We'll be ready immediately in the health office to check temperature if needed. We're asking parents to be doing that at home before they send their kids. We'll give them the checklist and the guidance, and reminders and encouragement to be doing that.
That was something that I know at my business and all businesses now are doing that. So I just wondered the expectation. Thank you.
Mine's up, and thank you for the presentation. This was a really good distillation of what we did as a team and also what the governor discussed today. But talking about some of the tail ends of the spectrum of what we need, can you address how special needs kids and those who are severely lacking the internet, how we might accommodate both groups there?
Yep. I'll take the special education question first, and I would include in that students who are receiving English language services. The in-person, most kids are coming every day, and their IEPs are followed as if we weren't in some other model. If at some point in the year we're in a hybrid, or the secondary for hybrid, and they're coming every other day, an IEP team might decide that a particular student needs to come every day, and we would accommodate that. Same for an English language learning student. If we feel that that student coming every day is necessary, we would accommodate that. I would caution us not to conclude that all special ed kids need that. Many kids need supports around their learning, whether it's in person or distance, and we will make that determination on a case-by-case student through their IEP. I'm trying to remember the second part.
Internet. The handful of kids that not even a hotspot will do.
That is a challenge. Every student will have a device 7 through 12. Their own device or a device we provide. They'll need to bring that device to school because their learning platform is Canvas, whether they're at home or in the classroom. So they'll need to bring that back and forth in their book bag. The challenge will be those remote parts of our community that have unreliable internet connectivity. We did purchase last year an additional hotspots this year. They're not a perfect solution. We will work side by side with families to explore all options. Some internet companies have grants that families can apply to. We'll work case by case and do our best to support those families.
Member Olson.
I just want to say thank you to the committee and the administration for formulating such a comprehensive plan. You answered all of my questions. It is very fluid, and I think we are going to be able to meet the needs of any student because we are giving them options, and no family should have any problems if they don't want to send their kid. Then distance learning is available. I do have a question about the hybrid model. Will we have gold and maroon teachers so that there's some consistency for those groups?
No, so the idea is if I'm a fourth grade teacher at Neil's building at Columbus, and I've got 26, 27 students, let's say 28 students, 14 come on in-person day to me, and then on the gold day, the other 14 come to me. And I'm building their extensions, their pre-teaching, their review as a companion to what I'm doing during the school day.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Although that school would be K-6.
That'd be K-6, so maybe not the best example, but if I take JP's school at the middle school, same thing.
Yeah.
I might have 34 students first hour, 17 are coming on in-school days, 17 are at home at the same time. I provided in Canvas what the learning looks like, and kids would do those extensions, pre-learning enrichments on their home days, and then also use Canvas for the in days. And that's through Canvas. I'll access my lecture notes, my PowerPoints, my videos that are also available to kids anytime, anywhere, especially when they're at home.
A quick question, are we asking our students that are choosing distance learning to identify by a certain date in order to get that set up?
Yeah, we'll be communicating with families right away and asking them to, we'll share the model, but also ask them to indicate through a survey if they are electing or need the distance learning option. We'll certainly put an expected timeline on when we need to see that information, but quite frankly, if that comes 2 or 3 days before school, we're going to do our best to serve that student in that home.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, we need that data as quick as possible, for sure, so we can plan.
Member Kelly.
I just want to make a statement. I want to recognize the teachers and the staff in our schools. Personally, my mom was a teacher her whole life. 2 of my kids followed her and became teachers. So teachers for me are a very personal thing. And I want to recognize the teachers and the staff that are in the schools, and especially because they have been identified as frontline workers. And I think that's a huge thing because truly they are. And I think we all have to recognize that the teachers also have families. So they're taking extreme risk in some cases going into the class, but that's all right because they accept that responsibility. So I just want to recognize the teachers and the staff that go to the schools for that.
So deserved.
Member Olson.
Due to the increased safety precautions that you laid out, will we need to hire more maintenance staff?
We're not anticipating the need to do that. We believe with our current staff and their emphasis and focus on making sure frequently touched spaces are disinfected, that they'll be able to do that on a nightly basis. We envision having disinfectant material spray bottles on the buses for one, where bus drivers will spray down buses as they finish a route. In a similar fashion, a spray bottle will be available in classrooms. We would ask if teachers could to spray down class desks and sinks or other frequently touched spaces before they finish their day and leave for the day. We've had some conversation with teachers testing whether or not that was an undue or overburdensome expectation. And we think that's a matter of minutes to walk through the room and spray. And that would go a long ways to helping custodians improve.
Sorry, Jen.
Member Leisner?
Sorry, and I've had the benefit of, I think, 7 times to ask a million questions in building this. Speaking more towards what we were given today from the government, and how we are written the resolution to follow it, this is almost a dream come true. I know a lot of people are annoyed that it took all summer to get, you guys get to decide, but I think there's greater value to the goalposts that are given, that are based in science, that are based in numbers, that are available to all of us, and that every district can work from the same general metric, so there will not be a gigantic difference between neighboring districts based on who shouted the loudest in their constituency. So Minnesota can be mostly equal as much as possible. So I appreciate that we're using a scientific-based metric that we did not have to make up ourselves because we're all professionals, but none of us are doctors. So we will gladly use the guidance, and I appreciate that that's how it was written as a resolution, that we will continue to follow the guidance as it was given, using our best judgment as a moderating force. And also to add, was a lot of discussion from the governor's thing today about schools that have very small classrooms or falling apart infrastructure or poor air quality. And I'm really happy to say that those are things we don't have to worry about here. So when they say you can make a more restrictive choice, that is giving those schools the option to have a choice because their buildings can't support the more in-person learning. And it's been stated every single meeting how good our air quality is and how thankful everyone is that bond came through when it did. Because there'd be no possible way to rush it between now and September, no matter what we did.
So we can thank our community.
Yes, thank our community, again.
Thank our community. I just wanted to add that my concern with the cleaning protocols, it just seems like once a day washing down touch points in an elementary building. I'm just curious if that would be sufficient. But
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question, and the spray bottle will be available. There will be wipes available, as you see at the table if you're in the district office, in classrooms. Custodians will be cleaning bathrooms and drinking fountains throughout the day. Although, let me say that drinking fountains, water fill stations are open, but drinking fountains will not be open. The frequently touched areas will be cleaned throughout the day by custodians, and teachers will be able to wipe down during the day. But that's the added benefit at the elementary level of keeping cohorts of kids confined to there's little interaction and mixed.
And I guess I feel more comfortable than the custodial staff who are cleaning the desks, but we can, I think teachers are busy at the end of the day, and I think we don't want that to get forgotten or missed if, they do have a especially busy day. So just for consistency's sake, maybe starting out, I'd like to see the custodials performing that, but I know it's all how many we have, and if we have enough. But
Yeah, I'm not so sure that this plan is because we don't have enough, we're gonna get by with this. I've learned a lot since we've been addressing COVID. One of the things I've learned is that the spray solution we use has a sit time, a dwell time, and in some cases it's 2 minutes or less, and it totally takes care of that surface. So that's the power and benefit of spraying down a desk. It doesn't need to be cleaned and wiped as long as that product dwells for that required amount of time.
so just simply a spray. Thanks for that clarification.
Dr. Massey, how do we intend on handling lunchtime both at the elementary and then conversely at the middle school and high school?
Yeah, for middle school, we're doing grab and go breakfast and lunch throughout the district. So at least to start. Once we get that under wraps, I think food service would be willing, if we're in person or a hybrid, to see if they can pull out hot meals. But we're going to start with grab and go meals. Those will be delivered to classrooms or to kids in the cafeteria at the table versus going through a line. Cafeterias will only be used if we properly space kids. And it might be a combination of classroom and cafeteria. Keep in mind, we have to supervise kids during the noon hour. It's the time in which staff are getting part of their duty through lunch and prep time. We would certainly want to account for that. But it'll be a combination of classrooms and lunchrooms with grab modules.
And play on that, how about recess? Like, I'm sure you guys have discussed all the options, the gym and, I mean, all those different options.
I will say that for recess, they'll be going out as a classroom. They will be given the best guidance we can to stay together, to play together, and not mix with other classes. It just sounds awful to have to say that, but it's the situation we're in. So we'll be guiding and directing our kids to do that. Phy-Ed, same, they'll be classroom-based. Phy-Ed teacher will pick the kids up so they're not mixing through the halls. Music might be done in a classroom versus a common choir room or music room. Our music staff, I would point out, have done incredible work researching how, through universities across the country, are providing guidance on how to do vocal music or instrumental music at the elementary or at the secondary level. There's some really impressive guidance being developed there so that we can continue to give kids an opportunity to do what they, in some cases, maybe the one thing they get out of bed in the morning to come do, and that's play their instrument. So we want to provide those opportunities the best we can.
Just a couple things. One, I do hope the staff understands that as a board, we understand that this is going to be a lot of work. I mean, this is going to be, it's a big deal, and it's going to be tough, and people are really going to have to rise up to it, and I just want to kind of go into it knowing that that's going to be the case, and as a board, you know, that we'll do whatever we can to support that and acknowledge it, I guess. The other thing too is that before we go to a vote, could we just read the motion a second time when we go to a vote, just so that if people come in later in the video, they'll see what the actual result is.
Any further discussion? So the motion on the floor is to approve the administration recommendation that in consultation with MDH guidance and in accordance with statewide case data, that Florence Lake area schools begin the school year with in-person learning for students in grades K-6, including early childhood education, and to begin the school year in grades 7 through 12 with a hybrid learning model, and that full distance learning option be provided for any student, and that the administration be prepared to adjust the opening plan according to the case numbers and in consultation with the Minnesota Department of Health. So, with that said, all those in favor of approving the administration's recommendation?
Could I call for a...
Certainly. All right, Member Clerk, would you please take a roll call vote?
Do we have a, oh wait, we're past that. Member Olson? Aye. Member Olson votes aye. Member Rayfield?
Aye.
Member Rayfield votes aye. Member Tyson? Aye. Member Tyson votes aye. Member Peterson?
Aye.
Member Peterson votes aye. Member Luzner votes aye. Member Corcoran? Aye. Member Corcoran votes aye. Member Kettle?
Aye.
Member Kettle votes aye.
Motion passes. See nothing further on our agenda, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.